Hey everybody, welcome back to We Are Podcast. This is Campfire Stories Presents Season 1, Episode 1, Brad Lyon and the B Stream. If this is your first time checking out the podcast network, please head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, or iTunes, and give We Are Podcast Network a like. And if you get a chance, head over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /We Are Podcast. And with that said, on to the podcast.
Campfire Stories.
Hey everybody, welcome to Campfire Stories, a podcast where we talk to independent filmmakers about their films. Today we have a very special guest. This gentleman not only is a filmmaker, he's an entrepreneur. He has been doing this for the majority of his life, it seems like, an accomplished athlete, an accomplished filmmaker, and the creator of the B Stream, a streaming platform where you can watch B movies all day long for a really nice price. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Brad Lyon. Is it Lyon? Is that how you say it?
You know, it's an interesting question. Technically, it's French, so it's Lyon. But being in America and with the middle name of Leo, you typically go with Lion pretty well. So I've always went with Brad Leo Lyon the majority of my life. My father's first name was Leo, so Leo the Lion worked out pretty well for him. And I was born in Michigan, which means I could naturally be a Detroit Lions fan.
Very nice, dude. Very nice. So I can say Lion.
Yeah.
Right,
you can call me anything you want, my friend.
I'm just going to call you Brad.
Sounds good.
So, Brad, we're talking a little bit about your streaming service, a little bit about the films that you have made. Let's start from the beginning, though. You were born and raised in Michigan, correct?
That's correct.
Flint, Michigan, to be.
Yeah, the murder capital of America, where even the water will kill
you. So, as a child, what were you like?
Oh, shucks. Confused. That kind of reiterates my whole life because, as you had mentioned, I came from an athletic background and I do, of course, film, which is much more of an art, dramatic background. And that was the whole thing for me growing up. It was figuring out the balance between, being the artsy drama kid that was doing professional theater outside of school and at the same time, playing for every sports team that we had, throughout the program. So it was an interesting balance of trying to figure out who I am and who I wanted to be. And ironically, here I am, 4 decades in, and I'm still not quite sure. I came out of retirement at almost 40 and he played another football season just a couple years back.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, dude. I have a quote that says your love of sports kept you from embracing your inner nerd for stage. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's some background to that. There was a number of opportunities as I was working occasionally on stage and doing commercial work and that type of thing here and there from a movie and video standpoint. I was also playing football professionally. So when you spend about, 8 years of your life playing football and you're trying to do those others on the side, quite often you have to, make a choice. And there's a widely known opportunity for a play that wound up winning a Tony that I was hand-delivered a role for that it was published that I turned down to keep failing miserably at football. It would have been one thing if it was like, hey, he's turning it down because he's playing in an NFL season right now. But as the article attested to, I was turning it down because I'm instead traveling all over the country trying to play. I'm in an arena team one week. I'm in Canada playing the next week. I'm showing up to camp and being sent home. And they're like, here's a thorough thing where you're probably getting more here financially than you are your entire 2 or 3 past seasons and, playing professional football. And here I am turning it down, trying to figure out who the heck I am still.
Yeah. So you went to college to pursue a law degree. Is that correct?
Yes. Interestingly enough, in college, you often try and get guidance from these things called guidance counselors who try and steer you in the way you need. And as I finally get into grad school and I'm studying law, I get this internship. My plan is to go into sports entertainment representation. And I have an internship with a rather prestigious agency all the way out in California. And I'm walking down the sidewalk with vice president of communications for the company, senior vice president. And this is a large firm with an army of people. And they've got headquarters, I think we had Miami, New York, LA. They had somewhere in Europe. I didn't pay attention to that because I wasn't a very good intern. And as I'm walking down the street, I know he had been a client representative for a number of years, for like 10, 15 years before he wound up in the position he was in. And we're talking. I'm like, so why in the world did you choose me out of the 5,000 applicants. I wouldn't have chose me, you know. And he goes, well, you know, you're going to law school. I'm like, yeah, so's the 5,000 other applicants. He's like, what? I'm like, so's the 5,000 other applicants. He's like, yeah, no, they're not. Like maybe five of them. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, do you think I'm a lawyer? I'm like, well, I thought you had your JD. I thought it was a requirement. He's like, yeah, that's not a thing. And I'm like, wait a second. I don't have to have a law degree to be an entertainment agent? He's like, no. I'm like, well, there went $147,000.
So did you change your mind on what you wanted to do at that moment, or did you continue down that path?
You know, it's all kind of went hand in hand throughout the years. For the better part of the OOs, I owned a professional minor league sports team with my father.
Yes.
And during that time, I was still trying to play professionally myself, bouncing around from team to team and come back and even play for our own team and go back and forth all the time. And, you know, my teammates will attest to the fact that because my brain was too diverted and I was trying to do too many things at once, including party, I was probably never great enough at any of them to be successful. So because of that, I continued to do what the general concept of my plan was, which was to represent a various number of clients. But for the most part, the emphasis was on the things that we had at hand. You know, I had a professional sports team. Towards the end of the decade, the film career was starting to take off. I was having a great number of opportunities to work with some fantastic films like All's Fair in Love with Christina Ricci and Matthew Lillard and Margaret, Cedric the Entertainer, Bill Engvall. Just, you know, time and time again, Real Steel with Hugh Jackman. I had all these fantastic, you know, film opportunities that in reality was paid me pretty well compared to what I was making in the minors, and you know, going out and getting a $300 or $400 a week check for arena football, you know, if they paid you, because half the teams were going out of business at that time, and rightfully so. It was, you know, the great crash of 2009, so a lot of teams went out. Matter of fact, we owned a team in the largest league in the world with 126 teams from Canada all the way down to Mexico, and by the time 2010 hit, our league had shrunk to 64 teams. Yeah, teams are going out of business everywhere. And that's just kind of the time frame in which I really realized, you know, the writing's on the wall. Our team itself that we were paying for was actually profitable for a few years, but towards the end there, suddenly you have buses of the entire team and staff. You've got 40 some active players for an away game, 48 players. We've got cheerleaders and staff and coaches, and you're busing these people to what used to be a Detroit rival that's an hour down the road. It used to be a Grand Rapids team. It used to be all these teams that are relatively nearby. And suddenly our closest rival was Indianapolis, which was 7 hours away, overnight stays. We had 10 and 12-hour trips where we're putting up an entire army of people. At this point, we're, you know, losing considerable money because the balance just wasn't there. The TV contracts that the league had that were relatively minuscule, I mean, it's minor league sports, went from, you know, one amount of money when you had 120 markets that we're all sharing from down to 64 markets. Everything had been reduced while our prices had increased, and we knew we had to adapt. Luckily, it was the golden age in the Midwest for cinema. And a lot of the states, especially the state we were based in, were providing film incentives, which provided revenue back for the money that you spent in the particular state. So we adapted, started producing content. Next thing we knew, we were making more money with that. So, you know, the career kind of switched over.
And that was a trickle down from owning the Genesee County Patriots, correct?
That's correct. Matter of fact, it was specifically from that. I remember the big event that was kind of the tidal wave. I get a phone call from our Visitors Bureau president, Preston. We'll call him Preston because I can't think of his last name. And I mean, it's been 20 years. And the guy gives me a phone call and says, hey, I talked with your dad. I was trying to see where he was at. He tells me, you're at the office. I got these guys that could use favor. And in walks, you know, Ron Reiner and Scott Marshall from Happy Days, and this gentleman named Michael Mendelson, who at the time was responsible for financing over $1.8 billion worth of film. So when you've got a guy who, you know, controls billions of dollars, you take notice when he walks in your office.
Yeah.
And, there was a relatively inappropriate joke I told him off the bat when he came in because I knew. And I just basically made sure to let him know whatever he needs. I've got my knee pads out, and if he needs me to cuff both balls, I've got him. And, you know, lo and behold, they had a situation. I won't talk about the actor who had had stepped away, but because of some situations behind the scenes, a lead actor on the film didn't feel he wanted to be there anymore. And that left them with having to recast the role last minute. The actor they cast in place of this man who comes up to about here on me, and I'm not that tall, 5'11" on a good day in shoes, was replaced by a 6'7" man. And the storyline just didn't make sense anymore with this guy being this big, tall, massive gentleman. So they wanted to remake him a football player and needed someone to coordinate the football scenes, get him players, get him uniforms, get him stadium, To summarize, we wound up pulling it off. I remember I asked him when call time was so we could start getting this together. He was like, 8 a.m. tomorrow. I'm like, all right, I'll come in. We'll start making phone calls. He's like, no, could we start shooting some of those scenes at 8 a.m.? I'm like, And then he's like, hey, billions of dollars, remember?
Yeah.
Like, fair enough. And that just kind of opened up the doors because I saw so many of our players excited to participate. I know I was enjoying that world. It was a world that I already had my feet in for a number of years that I always thought like, maybe that was the right calling. And there's something about sports. Now, I played, whether it was college or professional, what have you, I played in front of crowds with tens of thousands of people. And when you're sitting there, even if they love you, you're in your hometown stadium, your team's doing well that day, and they're actually pretty happy with you. One or two plays here or there don't go well, they're booing you and they're mad at you, and no matter what, you go through the highs and lows, a roller coaster with sports. But the beauty of film is if you do a decent job, and you go and tell your story, you've got a crowd full of people in the theater staring at this big screen, and they're just happy, and they're laughing when they're supposed to laugh and crying when they're supposed to cry, and they're appreciating the moment. They're just able to get away from the headaches of life for an hour and a half. And that's something we can't always give them through sports. Sometimes we're adding to their stress because we didn't provide the win. And that was one of the beauties that, really made it more comfortable is instead of hoping to get them to cheer, we could try and get them to cheer the whole darn time.
Damn, that is awesome and profound because you're right. People take it to heart. Sometimes they take film to heart too, but most of the time they just want to sit back and enjoy it. Whereas they get so passionate and involved in their sports. I'm not a sports person. I never was. If you can tell from my background, I'm more of a video game person. And the reason why is I grew up disabled, so I was never able to play sports.
Wow.
But I got wicked into weightlifting when I was younger, and that was my sport of choice. And you have been in the Ironman World Championship, is that correct?
That is correct.
Oh my God, what was that like?
I've got a medal or two on a wall somewhere.
Oh my God, congratulations. That's so cool.
I actually laugh because that's not true anymore. I'm currently in Florida at the moment, and most every trophy and medal I have is sitting inside a box in a garage that I probably haven't even stepped in, other than to hit a breaker. So sadly, I don't really celebrate some of those wins anymore. But they were proud moments of my life, whether it was an Ironman or even if it was just an AAU World Championship or it was, U.S. Open. I had a lot of great times, whether it was wrestling, football, or what have you. I got to enjoy it pretty good.
I was going to say, you were heavy into sports. You were like winning and just killing it. You also published a book on cheerleading. Is that correct? You were a cheerleader at one point.
So back in the day when I was a college athlete and you transferred, we didn't have the transfer portal. So when you transferred universities, quite often you had to deal with NCAA and to see if you'd be eligible immediately or if you'd be eligible after one semester of transferring. That's why most athletes would typically transfer right after that season immediately so that they'd have that second semester as that transfer sit out time frame. Well, when I transferred to this particular university, I was initially ineligible. So what I wound up doing is I remember the day where I'm sitting at this meet and greet table and I'm with my other wrestlers because I also wrestled in college. And there's a group of cheerleaders who come over and we're, being guys, we're going back and forth and flirting with each other. And then they made a deal with us. They said, we'll tell you what, if you guys will come help us with competitive cheer, because you guys aren't having to compete right now, we'll come mat made for you, which is basically the terminology for wrestling cheerleaders.
Oh, wow.
Most of us agreed. And the problem is once I say something out loud that I'm going to do, I actually follow through. So when I showed up, I was the only one of the guys who actually wound up coming through and doing it. I think we had a team with 48 women and 4 guys. So that kind of tells you the number of guys we had that followed through. And most of those weren't other athletes from that table. but I committed to what I was doing. And later in the years, because of my background of owning a professional sports team, we had a dance and cheer team. So I was heavily involved in that. And that's when Darnell Publishing reached out and said, hey, what we'd like to do is, talk more about these professional sports teams, these cheer teams, and it'd be really nice to get, a male author's, perspective from it, which isn't something we get too often. So they, brought me in the opportunity and brought me in on a number of publications after that because they seemed to be pretty happy with what we did.
So what you're telling me is you've got the moves.
I can throw a couple women up and down.
The B Stream. That's right, the B Stream is now on Apple, Android, and Roku TV and devices. The B Stream is a subscription streaming service dedicated to B movies, horror gems, and cult classics. Built for adults, we celebrate the edgy, hard-to-find films others won't. Not just Hollywood films, we spotlight indie filmmakers, underground favorites, new horror, sci-fi, and cult classics. If it's unruly, outrageous, or unapologetic, it belongs here. Visit thebstream.com and use promo code DUCKY, that's promo code DUCKY, for 50% off a monthly, quarterly, or yearly subscription. Don't miss out on the B Stream. Download now for Apple, Android, or Roku TV or devices. All links can be found in the description. Uncut, uncensored, and uncompromised. If it's not the mainstream, it's the B Stream.
I know we keep talking about the sports, but I think it's so important. You were in a mixed martial arts for a period of time, a champion of cage fighting. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the interesting aspect about that is that was also because of the other things. At the time, the professional mixed martial arts company that I was involved with traveled the country, putting on these big, lavish events, big arenas, filling up seats of thousands of people. It was pretty impressive. This was kind of the pre-UFC popularity days. You had Pride out here fighting, CCF fighting, UFC fighting, all these, what was then a bit smaller productions trying to figure out who's going to be the big guy. One of the things that this company did is they tried to find kind of local heroes, if you will, which is what they referenced them as, guys who had, won a world medal here or been a boxer there, what have you. And they would often make them an offer to be on the undercard. And they came in and made an offer to us and said, hey, we know there's this guy with this great wrestling background and he's playing football for your team, because they approached the team. They wanted to buy the rights to use me for the weekend. In exchange, they made an offer to the team that they would actually co-op all their advertising in the area, include the team in the advertising, and made a reasonable offer to me. I mean, for me, at the time, when you're being paid $300 or $400 in an arena game, and I think my best contract was like 22 grand in the arena league for the season. You weren't paid a lot back then. Even the NFL league minimum at the time, I think, was 220 and some change. And then the funny part is people would think like, hey, that's good money. Yeah, but you don't actually get it. So when you're a bum like me who doesn't make it 16 games, the contract itself is actually divided amongst the 16 weeks. And only a small portion of that is divided into camp. The rest of it's broke down game by game. So you don't get that guaranteed. So if you don't make it 16 weeks, you didn't get 220. If you make it a week, you're getting 1/16 of that,
Oh, wow.
So, a lot of times I'm not making very much. So when they said, hey, we'll pay $2,500 to him to come, fight in this fight, and we'll put you guys in the advertising, I said, oh, yeah, I could get knocked out for the, for $2,500, no big deal. I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't going in there expecting to win. Matter of fact, I kind of came out lavishly making it, a playful joke, knowing, hey, I'm not supposed to win here. I came out with my own little mini marching band and cheerleaders, and we're walking through the arena with a trumpet playing behind me, I'm dressed like Apollo Creed, and lo and behold, I wound up winning, and that continued. They called me up again. Hey, you made such a goofy farce of it, the crowd loved you. You want to come back? We'll give you $3,000 this week. And next it was 35, and before I'm done, I'm getting $4,500 paycheck, $5,000 paycheck to come in and get punched a few times. And I kept being very lucky. I never tell people I was very dominant. And yes, I retired undefeated, but I had a solid background and I took it seriously and I trained when I could outside of football. I came from the right family too. I wasn't a great striker, but my dad was a boxer. And then I had great grappling background from wrestling myself. The combination worked out pretty well. I had a lot of legends I got to work with. Dan the Beast Severns. I mean, heck, the building I initially was training in had his darn name all over the wall, for Pete's sake. And I'd go over to Coldwater and get a little work in. And then he wound up working with me in film. So, I had all these, legends at my disposal was willing to help me. And it made for a good early career. But I'll tell you what, at one point I knew that I would probably be asked to get my butt kicked by Dan because all of a sudden when he gets out, like, hey, you're training in this room where he's a legend, and then you're going to Coldwater in his facility, the protege should probably get his butt kicked by him. And interestingly enough, I wasn't even his protege. It's not like he was working with me directly every day or something, but you could tell that was kind of a push, and they were going to, probably go after him and give him a nice paycheck to come kick my butt. And then I worked with him this one day, and now we are shooting a scene, and the floor is cement, I'm sitting at a desk in this scene with a steel desk. And this man is sitting across from me. And let me start by saying I have a 60-inch chest. Okay. It's a bit fatter now these days, but it was a big chest, And his hand was as wide as my chest. He had these gigantic.
Wow.
Massive. And now the thing about cement is it's cement. It doesn't bounce. The thing about steel is it's steel. It doesn't bounce. It's not rubber. It doesn't have the give. If you hit a wooden desk in a house with the carpet and wood floor, you might get a little, jiggle out of it. Not out of steel. But we did this scene where I have to tell the guy that he's not going to be working for me anymore in this particular scene. And he brings his hand down and he just slams his hand on this desk. And the desk, a steel desk, in cement, bounces. And that's the moment I knew, like, I do not ever want to be hit by those hands. I am good. I don't even want to hear when they call. Do they want me to fight? No, good. I know my limits. I've got very lucky to this point. There's 3 guys who probably should have kicked my butt that I happened to catch or just happened to physically be stronger than, and they didn't really understand, like, hey, this is a great move, but maybe not on this guy whose thigh is the size of my existence. And because of a couple bad calls, because they weren't used to the massive power and size that I was, they got caught. And if they would have had better film study and knew who they were up against, because they were reasonably well-known mixed martial arts fighters, they probably would have beat me, because they would have known, hey, I probably shouldn't try this because this doesn't really work on his body type and he's really strong. So I just got lucky. This was before MMA fighters studied the other guy. They just thought their style was going to get them to win. The great wrestlers, like, I'm a great wrestler. The great boxers, well, I'll just box. The Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys is like, I'll tie him in a knot while I lay on my back. And they didn't cross over as much. And they didn't study the other guy if it was a different style. And that made me very successful because people didn't realize, oh, well, that might not work.
I was going to say, do you do stand-up comedy? You're an amazing speaker.
Thank you.
You go on stage, right?
So quite often, are you a Kevin Smith fan at all?
Oh, good sir, yes. And I can tell you are too.
Yes, indeed. So the reason I reference Kevin is Kevin does a lot of these tours where he comes in and he tells stories, entertains the audience. So I do what in theory people would call stand-up from time to time. But for me, it's just storytelling. I come in, I take you through some stories. Some of them involve fun people like, Dustin Diamond, God rest his soul, or being hypnotized by Christopher Walken's balls. When I tell these stories on stage, people tend to enjoy them, be amused, laugh, at times. And I don't ever want to take credit for being a stand-up comedian or traveling comedian. But from time to time, I do find the pleasure in going to a theater and entertaining a crowd. We did a tour a year or so ago where we did about 11 states, and it went pretty well.
Are you going to do your own The Evening With, like Kevin did back in the day? I watched those so many times.
Those were kind of the concept of what we would do. We didn't use the phrasing "an evening with." I really liked those phrasings. But you typically come in and you would just, you'd see my name on the billboard and hear me talk for a while. Some of them would have a co-op opportunity where you get to see a screening of a movie. And then one of them that I directed, and then you do like a Q&A and I'd tell stories and be like a whole thing. It was a very fun time. We're planning a tour for April, starting in April. And that tour is going to both promote the B Stream and involve a number of my shows. So we'll be back at it one more time, and
That's amazing.
people will have to hear my boring stuff over and over again.
Oh no, dude. It might get boring to you, but it's never boring to a crowd. Trust me. They love it. And that's the one thing I learned before I did stand up, because I was a huge Kevin Smith fan. In fact, if it wasn't for Hollywood Babylon with Ralph Garman and Kevin Smith, I never would have done stand up in the first place. He was such an inspiration. He's such a hero. And I finally got to meet him, and he did not let down. It was awesome. So, all right, let's back up a little bit. When you were doing the team, right, with your father, you ended up creating Line Productions so you could start with TV commercials and partner with companies and things like that. And
Yes, Lion Productions basically started off as a supportive company for the Genesee County Patriots. We were involved in a lot of partnerships with various companies like Hooters and Bob Evans, companies that did very well by us, even the U.S. Army, where they're advertising partners with us, and a lot of the stuff we were having to outsource. Now, for a brief period of time, we had a TV contract, and we found that it was much easier if we self-produced it instead of having third parties come do it and we're making peanuts, because if we produce the content, we're directly licensing it and we're getting far more of the revenue. And then once we were doing that, we realized, hey, if we could take over and pick up some of these commercials that we are partnering with and producing the commercial content, we wouldn't have to, cut ourselves out of that. And when you're a small mom and pop, professional sports team, every bit of revenue keeps you afloat, because over the nearly decade that we owned that team, very few years were we really, what would be called profitable. We're selling our souls half the time to try and keep people's paychecks in and, food on their table. So with that being the case, Lion Productions initially was this entity that broadcast games, created commercials, created industrial content. The next thing I know, we're being asked to produce on the national level what's called national spots for some major brands for TV commercials. They liked the content we were making for them for our show. They were licensing it. Then they're asking us, hey, can you do this? My minor was actually IC, which is image consulting. So it flew together pretty well, because I was able to come in and say, hey, this is what I think of your brand. This is how I would try and increase revenue by taking the audience and the consumer and making them feel this way about the product. Because the thing is, you don't really try and sell a product. People who aren't in marketing, quite often even people who aren't in marketing, don't realize that you don't really sell a product. No one cares really if it's 551 horsepower or 550. That's like 0.01% of the audience that gives a crap about that. They don't care about the exact processing speed of your computer. They don't care about these things. The general person just wants to know how it's going to make them feel. Am I going to have an easier life because of it? Am I going to be sexier because of it? Is my health going to be better? Am I going to get laid? And those are the things they care about. So you want to create a feeling. And that was the big thing, is I'd work with brands to make them understand, let's take your brand and make your brand, by doing A, B, and C, make the audience feel this way. And we became pretty successful at it. Same way with some of the music videos I wound up getting hired for some relatively big artists, just simply because I was there and one company knew another company. They're like, hey, this guy's over here. You want him to just fly over and do it, So I had a lot of opportunities early on for stuff that I didn't even anticipate was going to be so integral to the foundation of my career. And I got a lot of respect for it, simply from looking at it from a business perspective, because I came from that background where my job is to create a psychological aspect of the audience to look at you and feel and create an emotional reaction. And because your average director doesn't come from necessarily a business background and doesn't come from a background of, hey, I'm trying to train you to think this way by looking at the way this person's image is, you don't have that same concept. So I had an advantage of having the background of knowing how to adapt a message for the sake of getting an emotional response and making people feel a certain way, which enabled me to have a lot of success with music videos, with commercials, and then eventually make that part of my directing style.
And so we get to the filmmaking. When do you decide you want to be a director, writer, actor, produce? Well, you're already producing.
Most of those were not a self-made decision. They were opportunities that came on the table, quite often not something I was going after, but were asked of me because of things falling apart. One of my first screenplay situations was when a particular producer I'd already worked with on a couple significant films came to me and said, "Hey, we're really interested in this style of football. We didn't even know there was these minor leagues out there. I didn't even know there's arena ball." And yeah, arena at the time was, on major television, but like it's the same way with like there's professional spring football right now. And a lot of people don't even know there's a pro spring football league, let alone can name it. And yet it's on, Fox TV for Pete's sake. So when, this person came to me, he wanted me to write the script. I wrote the script for him. I won't get into too many details on this aspect, but I didn't hear from him for months. So I'm like, well, I sure couldn't write a screenplay. I must have been trash. And then I get a call months later. They're like, "Hey, do you want to, make this?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I thought it sucked because you sure didn't say anything." I'm like, "Well, oh, you thought it sucked, but you won an award, I'm like, "Well, what award? What are you talking about?" Turned out I'd won a relatively significant New Writers Award from a major festival, and I didn't even submit it. They had submitted it to a number of festivals and our writing awards, and then we won a couple bells and whistles. He said the reason they do that is they try and see if they can have hardware for when they create pitch decks, for when they finance things, because they go to their investors and say, "Hey, we've got the screenplay. It's an award-winning screenplay, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, I had no idea. No one told me. I don't have the award."
You think they would include you in.
Right. It's not in that box in my garage. I mean, it could be. I haven't looked in a while. So yeah, it turns out it was a much better script than I had thought it was. And he had made the offer and said, "Hey, we're in a situation where there's possible writer's strike," which happened years later, but it was looking like it was going to happen then. So he's like, "Here's two choices. You can come in LA. We can make it in LA. You can wear a pretty little hat, have absolutely no involvement. We'll give you $1, and you can be the writer, and you can shut the F up, hang out, and eat some food on set." I'm like, "Well, that sounds kind of cool, I guess." Or because we're worried about the shutdown and this could get shut down and this movie isn't a priority for us, you can produce it and I can help you get distribution. And that's kind of the route we went, where I decided to bring it to my hometown, make it in the state I originally wrote it for, and employ people that I cared about inside my hometown. And it was a great experience. The intention wasn't to produce, but then we had people who were vouching for me saying, "Oh, wow, I can't believe you're able to get this kind of production value. You've got stadiums and restaurants and all these beautiful locations that we could never get on these type of budgets, And I'm like, "Well, I'm surprised you couldn't. Did you try asking?"
Yeah.
Did you call these places up, But there is a different mentality because a lot of people in the world of film, they pursued it from day one. They were drama kids. Maybe they went to college after high school, or maybe they just ran to LA and wanted to live their dreams, but didn't have a background in film. And a lot of times these executives were guys who didn't have a business background. They didn't necessarily succeed as an actor or what their first dream was, and worked into the executive world and used acting to get them forward. There's a big cultural thing in LA where the whole fake it till you make it thing is accepted there. In the Midwest, you're from Pennsylvania, it's a different mentality. You try not to fake it, you try to be real, but you understand if you're in LA why. It's just the concept of building your brand. It's not trying to be bad. They're not trying to be liars. They're trying to make their brand valuable by making their brand seem to be awesome. But because of that, most of these people don't have a lot of business sense. And I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying there's a good portion that didn't come from that world. So I had a significant advantage where a lot of these times they're like, "Wait, you can ask them, you can renegotiate." They can say, "Hey, $5,000 a day," and you can say, "What about $3,000?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's how it works." You don't like I'm shocked, and I feel bad for all the people you ever worked with.
Yeah.
I remember I worked on a particular big studio film. In the world of film, you have these guys called line producers, and they negotiate deals and work out deals with vendors. And then you have UPMs, who are basically like a general manager on set. Quite often, even though they work together, they don't interact that well because film isn't always set up for the best business structure. It's great to run an army, but it's not always great to not bleed and hemorrhage money. The reason we succeed is we don't bleed and hemorrhage money. So I'm on this big budget film, and they have this crane they're renting that's costing them $40-some thousand a day because they're renting this crane. They're paying for these union people, what have you. and the crane isn't moved, and the people haven't even been on set. They haven't even been there working because they were off. There was no more shots for this, and yet we were spending all this money. And at that point, we had overspent $200,000 on it. So
Yeah.
I'm reaching out to the UPM and the LP, and neither of them were even in town for the film. The LP is like, yeah, I did my job beforehand. I signed the deals and got them in. If you need someone else hired or something, I'll go negotiate it. But I'm not overseeing scheduling. And then the UPMs were like, well, that's an AD department. AD department's like, well, that's a UPM department. So finally, I went to the executive producers, who are usually the money guys, and I'm like, hey guys, do you know you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars right now? They're like, wait, what the hell you mean? I'm like, oh, like half of your equipment you're running right now, you're not using it. It's not scheduled anymore. You're paying 40 some $1,000s a day for this crane. So they thanked me and they canceled the crane, saved themselves, another couple $100,000 for the rest of the shoot. And I pissed off half the world because I remember when I went to this union producer seminar, they're like, did you get this person almost fired? And I'm like, no, I just did the job they didn't do because they don't pay attention, don't care that they're using production money. Because the worst sentence in the world that I've ever heard in this industry, I hear on almost every single film set. And they reference, oh, that's just production money. And it's the most offensive thing because, like, somewhere there's real humans behind that money. Like, someone's actual money was invested hoping for the success in this film. And film isn't always successful by any means. And, they're gambling and paying everyone's bill. Like, the person who says production money are getting a check from these people, And these people believed in you and you didn't give a shit enough about them to protect their money. It's really insulting. So that's one of the things that I've always earnestly tried to make sure, like, whoever invested, wherever the money comes in, we're doing our best to protect the money and get the most out of it. And that's something you don't see in film a lot, which they're part of those things that the people just didn't know or didn't care,
Wow, dude, you just gave me an education. I appreciate that. That was very eye-opening. And damn, dude, I didn't even know that like they could be hemorrhaging money like that. That's
Oh yeah.
crazy.
That's the sad part of it. That's why a lot of these budgets explode. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of money spent on big name actors, but that's part of a brand. You're paying for a brand. You're not paying for the actor, you're paying for sales. People want to see this person, so they'll come and they'll buy a theater ticket because this person's in it. And that's fair. That's what you're working for as an actor, to have a value that people want to see you, so people pay for you. That's all. But the actual business aspect from it, so many of these people do a terrible job. I've even had some people working for me that I had to come down on them. I remember, like, we'll cater our food, our meals. First and foremost, typically on productions, we're only in charge of having to provide one meal, unless it, the hours goes ridiculous or what have you. And I was known pretty well for, like, providing a first meal, providing your actual meal, which is right at that 8 hour mark or 6 hour mark. And then often I'd provide a third meal. The third meal would usually be something cheap. You didn't have to eat it, but I'm doing it for free. So you don't have to, like, it's just, something I'm doing. And we have craft services for snacks on the side, but I'd have these people come in and I'd have these ADs and I would hear the phrase, I remember an assistant director doing it once, just calling it production money and just buy a bunch of extras. So they're buying 3 or 4 meals per person, just so they could choose between which meal they wanted, because they didn't grasp money. They didn't understand money. So they're just like, oh, it's production money. Let's just buy the meals instead of ask them what they want, and they can just pick from it, And like, no, you're literally tripling the budget on catering every day by doing that. And it's things like that that they don't understand and they miss. And the funny part is, half the time they treat you like a villain for it, when in reality, you're like, no, this is how business works. You're just really bad at it.
Yeah, you're saving the film at that point. Or that money could be spent on another film, But it sounds by the cost of things. Wow, dude, just hearing you talk about that, dude, like seeing the producer come out, you are no nonsense, man. You don't mess around. Let's talk about Thursday the 12th, the film that you made. How did that idea come about? Did you decide, hey, I'm going to make my own film. I'm ready. I've done this for so many years.
Well, shucks. Thursday the 12th was probably the 20th or 30th movie in for me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was going to say, because you've been producing. Was this your first time directing?
No, I directed a number of films. I directed movies like Little Creeps with half the Saved by the Bell cast, Lisa Turtle Lark Voorhees, Dustin Diamond, aka Screech, Robert Zadar, Bobby Z, the Maniac Cop, A great cast in that. Monsters on Main Street, I had my buddy Marty Kleba from Pirates of the Caribbean was producing that with me, and I directed that team with a great cast. We brought Bobby back because he's great, and Todd Bridges from Different Strokes. Don't Wait Till Dawn. I had the pleasure of working with Vernon Wells, who I learned on set was a former AD. And I tell you what, I love telling people the fact of just how great of a guy he was, because we had some inexperienced ADs working and I was doing double duty and I hadn't been sleeping. And he had caught that. He realized what I was doing in between camera setups was AD work. He comes over, he's like, why the hell are you doing this AD work? I'm like, well, we have these blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't throwing anyone on there to the bus, but we're doing the best we can and I'm trying to make up for it. And suddenly he screams at the entire crew and tells them, get their asses over here, and he gives them a lecture. He's like, look, I've been doing this for decades, and this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. I've watched this director over the past 3 days do about 4 or 5 different people's jobs, even though there's crew members on set who are in charge of doing those jobs. And he said, the AD department, you're done. I'm the AD today.
No way.
He told our AD department, I'm the AD. He's like, I will show you how this is done because you're not doing your job. He's doing your job while trying to direct, which is ridiculous. He did put our AD department in their place, but rightfully so. I remember our second AD. I love the guy. I've known this guy for years. Still do. I talked with him this week. But at one point, he was bitching about the unprofessionalism of me because we didn't have call sheets. And here's the interesting part. I asked him later on, after I found out about this, do me a favor, Google second AD. And he went ahead and did. I'm like, what's it say in the very first sentence of what your responsibility is? And he's like, second ADs are in charge of things like call sheets. And I'm like, yeah, these are the things you guys were bitching at me for not having that I wound up trying to do and gave you guys almost every day, even though it's literally your job and you were the guy who bitched the most about them and you weren't doing. And this is the reason why Vernon stepped in. He's like, look, he's doing all these jobs he shouldn't be doing. He should be directing and getting the best performance out of us. And it was such a beautiful thing because he meant it. He cared and he worked hard. And I think our AD department did learn from that because I didn't fire these guys. They were good guys. They just didn't do their job well. I didn't hire them in those positions again after that, but
Right.
I'm still friends with them. So yeah, I did a number of films beforehand. And quite often, a lot of the jobs were not intending to be the job I was doing. Like when I played LaMarche in minor league, I did not set out to want to play one of the lead characters. I did want to play one of the characters. I'd been an actor for 20 some years. I knew I was going to save some money. I was going to have some fun. I was going to play this particular role that I was having fun with. But we had done thousands of auditions. I'm not even exaggerating. At one point, we had 3,500 people lined up at an audition. Well, you can't get through 3,500 people. We had to go in line and got 500 people at a time just because they didn't visually fit what we were doing. And this was over days. Like, it was fantastic, the turnout we had. But we couldn't find that right balance. Being that I'm from the sports world, I wanted the characters to emulate physically what the character is supposed to be. So we had a bunch of guys who were 150 pounds trying to pretend to be these fullbacks and linemen. And no, I'm sorry, that's not what these guys are. It's great that you're a great actor, but time and time again, I had this good staff around me, and they're like, bro, like, I don't know how you're going to find a guy who's like you who can, also has range. And that's when they're like, why don't you play this character? And I'm like, I'm not trying to like do that. I'm not trying to be the guy who's, puts himself in this. And they're like, but you should, because you fit what you're looking for and you're trying to find you. You're trying to find this big, I was in better shape at that point. You're trying to find this like physically relatively impressive guy that, fits the mold of being a little smaller than a lineman, but bigger than the average person, that looks a certain way, but has a certain range. And we can't find that. We're finding a bunch of guys who can act, who are 150 pounds and won't be on a pro football team, or guys who look like football players who have no acting experience. So, I wound up accepting that role without the intention of doing it. Years later, we have a particular director hired for a movie. I'm a fan of this director. I'm still a fan of him today. He was awesome for what he was willing to come and do this particular film. He loved the script, but we really butt heads on a creative aspect.
Oh, no.
I wrote this script, and I was very adamant of it being done right. And I tried to explain we're not a $20 million movie, so we can't do the CGI that he's thinking that we can do to fix certain things. He wanted to do things that would make it really comfortable for him to direct and also comfortable for the cast. It'd be easier because we would have less night shoots. But these particular scenes needed nights. Like imagine a high school football game. A high school football game is played under the lights.
Under the
That's the
lights,
big
yeah.
thing, you know? That's why literally there's a TV series called Friday Night Lights, and you have to have the vibe and the feel of that. And if you don't have that and you decide you're going to shoot all these scenes at 11 a.m. during the day with the sun up, it takes away what's the magic of those scenes.
Yeah.
And this particular person, who's a fantastic director, didn't have a background in athletics and didn't connect with that. So days beforehand, I wind up butting heads with him so much on this particular topic that I wound up having to let him go. And we're trying to replace them, and they're like, "Look, you've directed half a dozen things already. You know, why don't you just direct this particular thing?" And we were in such a bind. I'm like, "All right, you know." And that's really how a lot of it came down. It was people believed in me, and I already had certain experiences beforehand. I was hoping to get other people in, but it made more sense because I'm already there. I'm
Right.
more familiar with the content than anyone else is, and I have some experience in the particular field. So the intent was never to initially do these things. The intent was to let people smarter than me at the thing do that thing. But as years progressed, the knowledge and experience you get, suddenly you're realizing, oh, now I am one of those people. Now I do have that knowledge. And I think it started to come out when I was directing, when I'm working. Initially, my job as a director who also produced was hire people who are smarter than me at the things they do and let them make me look good. But eventually, 10 years in or something, I am micromanaging a bit too much, but I'm going over to my gaffer and I'm talking about maybe we'll gel this differently. And we're talking about creating shadows and we're talking about painting with light. And as things are progressing, I'm realizing I now have the knowledge at a certain level, if not beyond, of some of my departments. And I realize now I am actually capable, and now I have this, and I am that guy. It's kind of like going back to the Kevin Smith story. Kevin Smith butted heads with Bruce Willis once on Cop Out.
Shuffa.
And I remember, and Bruce might not have had the tact, but he wasn't necessarily wrong in this moment.
Right.
Because Bruce had simply asked him, what's my frame and what lens are you using? And Kevin goes to his cinematographer and says, hey,
Dave
what lens
Klein,
are you
yeah.
Yeah. And the guy kicks in. He's like, wait, you don't know what lens you're using? You're the director? And it was fair. That's a reasonable argument. Yes, the way you did that and the way you called him out was kind of embarrassing and not polite. That wasn't having manners. But at the same time, yeah, you should understand the vision you're trying to get across. As a director, I need to understand the frame. Why am I selecting this particular lens? Because I'm trying to create an emotional moment, and I should understand what my emotional moment is. It's my job to say, this is what I want you to find, cinematographer. I'm looking to create this frame with this image and this feel and this depth of field, so that maybe the background's taken out. So this person is just the most important, or maybe it's not, and the whole world is important. Like, you have to care about these things and know them. And there was a time where I didn't know that stuff, and now there's a time where I'm very aware of that stuff. So now I feel confident in doing my job, and ironically, now I feel confident in a lot of the other departments as well.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, it's just Duck jumping in here real quick to say thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you're enjoying it, head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, or iTunes, and give We Are Podcast Network a like. And if you get a chance, head over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /We Are Podcast. And with that, back to the podcast.
Brad, you got me on the edge of the seat, you talking about all this stuff, because I love it. Like, I would love to get into filmmaking eventually, but I don't know any of this stuff. So you're just educating me like more and more and more.
Let me give one of the most important pieces of advice to any person who wants to get into filmmaking. I believe there's an evil notion out there, a self-serving evil notion. And this is contradictory to every director who will give this interview. If you ask almost any filmmaker and director, their polite thing that they say quite often is, just go out there and make your film. Just go out there and do it. And I believe there's truth to that. Do go out there and do it. However, go out and do it with education, because I believe there's a sneaky thing in my industry. I believe the reason they tell you just go out and do it, because you won't know how to do it, and it'll just make them look that much better. And I think that's why they're saying just go out and do it. The reality is, you need to understand these things. You have a team of people underneath you. You have investors who are putting money in, whether it's your own or someone else's, or a credit card, or mom and dad, whatever it is. You have people relying on you. They're putting in your time, hoping that the movie you're telling will somehow help their career. And to do that, you have to respect that time and do your best effort. And if you don't understand emotional camera movement or even color temperature or the Kelvin scale or these type of things, you're not going to create an adequate film. And so learning those basics so you understand how and why to do things is so important. So don't just go and make your film, go and learn the craft, study, go to seminars, go PA for free on some film sets, watch, observe, learn, get hands-on experience, maybe take, an actual class at your local college. Do what it takes to get the knowledge before you decide to make that film and then make the film. That way you're not just wasting your time, you're not wasting everyone else's time as well.
Right. I agree with you. And a lot of people are gaining education through podcasts, YouTube, like you said, seminars,
Mhm.
classes, things like that. And like you said, you're a fan of Kevin Smith. He does a lot of education. I don't know if he realizes he's doing it, but he does.
Well, the good part about Kevin that I really enjoy is his honesty because he'll say when he screwed up. Sometimes he'll say things and he doesn't even realize he's saying he screwed up. But like he will share a lot of his faults. And those faults are great learning lessons where if you listen to it, it says, hey, don't go do what he just did. Go fix this, get this knowledge, train, prepare for this so that this mistake doesn't happen. Kevin is a sweet guy. I remember he reached out to me one time when Bobby Z died, because at the time I was managing him. And he told me this beautiful story about he never got to direct Robert Zadar, and how he would watch him every day when he was working at this video store because one of his favorite movies to put on repeat was Maniac Cop. And it almost broke his heart, he said, because he had forgot that he had planned to put him in a movie at some point and get to work with him. And he couldn't believe hearing the guy had passed away and was so sorry to hear it because he was looking forward to it and just it slipped his mind, And it was one of those learning experiences where it's like, we only have so much time and we have to do something now or we'll miss out, especially when it comes to being able to work with people we care about. I've had the privilege of working with just about everyone in the View Askew universe. I mean, you just watched Thursday the 12th. We got Marilyn Gigliotti in there,
Yeah.
the female from Clerks, who, by the way, did a wonderful performance. She's such a strong actor. Jeremy London, I just worked with on Killer Keg. He's one of our main cast members in that. He plays a manager of a restaurant. I mean, heck, I think I directed Muse for a day at the wrong time in his life. So yeah, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of good, talented people, especially from that universe. And the one thing Kevin, I think, tried to do really well was put good people together.
Yeah.
Put people who cared about the project together.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's transition a little bit. I want to talk about the B stream. I want to talk about how did you decide to get into a streaming service like this? Like, where did that origin come from?
Well, first and foremost, I've always been a B movie nerd. Some people are anime nerds, some people are, into whatever the heck they're into. My nerdism is horror and B movies, whether it's, a classic like The Room with Tommy Wiseau or a Troll 2. Technically, Evil Dead is a B movie, and
Totally.
Army of Darkness is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Hilarious.
But when you look at my list of my favorite movies, you'll see an Oscar winner like Braveheart right next to Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh God, I love Killer Clowns so much.
And that's the way that whole list rolls. Like my next film is then Birdman, which is this beautiful Oscar winner from Alejandro Inarritu. Then it's Super from James Gunn,
Yeah.
which is a brilliant film, so brilliantly goofy B movie film. And that's the thing. Like I love beautiful art, but at the same time, I just love a fun story and people out there trying to tell the best story possible and not take themselves too seriously. And I truly find entertainment in that. When you do films like mine, I am an 80s guy. Now, I was too young in the 80s to really, grasp it, but I grew up on those 80s films. My parents were cool parents who by the time I was 3 or 4, they're letting me watch horror. They're like, there's less violence in a horror movie than there is in your cartoons, and it was true. I mean, you're watching G.I. Joe blow up, half of an army. You're watching Wile E. Coyote run over a cliff. You're watching Bugs Bunny blow someone up with dynamite. Like, honestly, horror movies weren't that bad.
Yeah.
They just happen to have fake blood that looks more like fake blood than the blood on the cartoons, And to bring this round circle, I love those films, and I love making a certain type of film. I love making a film that's not worried about what they're saying. that's just telling a story and letting a character, if there's an asshole character, a racist character, a sexist character, let them be racist or sexist, or because that's who that character is.
Right.
It's not that that's who that movie is or who I am. It's who the character is, and it's telling an honest and fun story, and it's not worried about things. So if there's a offensive joke that offends half the world, God, be offended. I want you to feel something. Be bothered. That's the intent. That's what we want. And you know what? When people are having sex, they usually don't do it with all their clothes on. I'm sorry, today's like I don't know why it's so horrible for the thought of having boobs unless it's being told by a director who happens to be female. There is a different form of art today. Things can be told in a certain way by either certain people or it offends the entire world and people are bitching about it. And here's the thing. More and more as we watch today, we see the movies we love either taken away or edited in such a way that it's just a pathetic version of what it once was. So as I'm watching that progress and I want to make the movies I love, and I started seeing some of my films get released certain places and they were getting hacked up and edited and people didn't even know it. And they're watching, they're thinking, what the heck is this? I'm like, it's not the movie I made because they're editing the shit out of it. I decided I wanted to have a home where no matter what, we would fight to release the uncensored version of the movies that we receive, where there would always be people fighting to have honest and authentic movies, where we're not going to cancel a movie, where we're going to let a Serbian film play in its uncensored way. And yeah, that's a crazy movie. It's got some scenes in there. And that's not for everyone. Like, I think it's a great movie in and of itself. It's not necessarily the movie I want to watch, but I want people who want to watch it be able to and make the choice,
Right.
And that's what the B Stream's about. And as I watched the industry change and more revenue comes out of it with home video dead, a lot of people don't realize home video for the past 20, 30, 40 years had been the blueprint of being able to be successful as a filmmaker. You didn't usually make money in the theaters.
Right.
You actually released a movie in the theaters as a loss leader, trying to create prestige so that there'd be more copies of it on the shelf at Blockbuster and Family Video. And when that's no longer the case, we don't have that revenue coming in. Now we just have, if we made $1 at the theater, which most likely we lost money, and then you're coming into, video on demand and streaming. And contrary to public belief, we're not making millions of dollars every time that movie streamed. We're making less. When a movie was bought and on the shelf at a Blockbuster, we're at least making $1 or $2 for every one of those DVDs when Blockbuster existed. When a movie streams on Amazon, we're making pennies every time someone streams it. Literal pennies, no exaggeration. 2, 3, 4 cents. That's it. I'm not exaggerating. That's literally what they're paying per stream. So I want to make a place that would do two things. Allow us to see the movies in the way we wanted to see them and help allow me to continue to tell the stories I want to tell so that there would always be a place for them to be released in the way they were meant to be.
Wow. And I didn't know that streaming, it was literal pennies. I was like, it can't be that much. But honestly, though, you've created this platform where it works. And I can't say that about every other platform because I go in and I was almost trying to crash it, to be honest with you. I was like, is this going to hold up? It's strong. And the presentation is strong. And your selection is strong. Everything is good across the board. I got to watch Butcher's Bluff on it, which I talked to William Instone, the director, writer, actor, producer, everything of that film. And he's like, awesome. That's the unedited version. He goes, it's hard to find. He goes, everywhere else, they want to edit it. That's awesome that you've created this place where art can be protected in a way, honestly, in a big way. And that is so cool. Is it relatively new? I mean, how long has it been out? I just happened to find it the other day.
Well, you hit it on the head. We just finished our third quarter of operation. We haven't even been around a full year. Technically, the company launched in December of 2024. We had the goal of being live in the start of 2025, but it's a bit of work to get apps up and running and get everything licensed, what have you. So we didn't launch our apps until March of 2025.
What was the inspiration behind having it be a social media app in a way too? Because you can comment, you can't rate. I don't think you can rate the
Yeah,
film.
you can.
You can. You have the Hive there where people can interact with each other, discuss movies, all that. What was the inspiration behind that?
Let me go back quickly and mention on the right, you get to go into the comment section. You can share what you think of it. You can rate the film. But as opposed to like having a specific, this is a 4-star movie, the thing is, I will have a friend and we will love 20 of the same movies, and we feel the same thing. And then we'll come to a certain movie and he will think it's absolute garbage and I'll think it's amazing. A perfect example is this movie that just came out this week, is the second part of that 28 years later,
Yeah,
you
the
know?
Bone Temple.
Yes, and the Bone Temple is so batshit crazy. It's like someone said to the filmmaker, look, sometimes you just got to make a movie the way you want to make it, put whatever the hell in it you want to do, and just have some fun with it, not give a shit. And he's like, bet. Hold my beer. I'm going to go make some batshit crazy movie. Because that sequel was batshit crazy. And I thoroughly enjoyed it because it was batshit crazy. There's a music video in the middle of the movie. There's a fantastic music video in the movie.
Wow.
And you'll understand when you watch it. And there's people who's like, this movie is garbage. And I can understand from a particular perspective why you could feel that way, especially if you wanted the serious 28 Days Later originally was. That's not 28 Days Later. It's a different film, but it's set in that same universe. And I can get that. And that's why one of the things we haven't done is created a star system or rating system in it that impacts where the film will play or sit, because that's what's supposed to be the beauty of B movies. B movies are bad for a lot of people. Like a lot of people would give The Room 1 star, and deservedly so. But then a lot of people would drive 5 hours to watching a room full of screaming people with laser pointers because they love it for reasons that make absolutely no sense. And if you rate movies, you're not going to experience them because that 1 star movie is going to be at the most bottom of the joint.
I agree with you. We discussed Terrifier last night on the Camp/Horrorcast. 3 of us love it because it's Terrifier.
Yeah.
One person who just saw it that evening hated it and made for great discussion. And that's what I love about it.
And I can see both parts. Was it brilliantly written? No. And you know what? The guy who made it, Damien, says it wasn't. I'm a special effects guy. I'm not a brilliant writer. He's like, I am just having fun telling a story about a quirky, guy who's played by David, who, in his own words, is autistic and is unique and brought that to that character. And you don't watch Terrifier for a great story. You watch it because it's just a goofball horror character that unlike a lot of horror today, wasn't afraid to be a horror movie.
Yeah, and that's what we were trying to get across to him. And he kept going back to, but the story, there is no story.
No.
It's gore porn.
Matter of fact, the more he tried to put a story in it in the sequels, the more he was screwing up because the story was going everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like,
absolutely.
bro, focus.
Yeah, I prefer that first one over the sequels. But Terrifier had to have a place for people to see it. And this is what I love about the B stream. It's going to be word of mouth. You know what I mean? It's totally going to be one person be like, do you know there's a place where you can see this movie and that movie and all your B horror favorites or B movie favorites? And like, you're licensing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of content on there.
We're constantly growing. That's one of the reasons that social element's there, because I am not the guru of all things B movies. I want to be. Maybe Roger Corman truly was, but I don't know everything. I miss movies all the time. I find gems all the time, and I can't do this alone. So the social media aspect isn't just for our members, it's also for me. So you can tell me, hey, do you know this movie? And I'm like, no, let me go find out about this movie. And then I'll see if we can license it. And I'll see if we can bring it here. We can't license everything. My favorite movie is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I can't afford to get that one. When we can, we'll get it, But that's the thing. Like, I want people to have a place where if they want to talk about why they loved Sleepaway Camp, or maybe they like Slumber Party Massacre because of the boobs, and they're allowed to say it and no one's going to cancel you. And you can say, I like boobs in movies because I'm a dude who likes boobs in movies because I like boobies. It's just like, I want you to feel free and I want you to have fun. And that's what our social media world's for. It's where we're going to protect you. Come out and enjoy yourself and interact with each other and tell me the movies you want. And my team is going to try and license them if we can. We're also going to tell you why we can't. Because we do that. We tell, like, if you look through the track record, we've got numerous movies we put in there that people have asked for. And we have numerous movies people have asked for. We said, hey, it's with this company. It's with Shudder on an exclusive. It's with Paramount owns it. And Paramount has Paramount Plus, and they don't want to give us movies, there's various reasons. Sometimes I'm just an asshole and don't like the filmmaker. Like we do all know each other.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'll admit it. I'm full disclosure. Sometimes I don't get along with someone, and that's the only reason. But I want it to be a home for everyone. Matter of fact, I even want it to be a home for them. There's a particular person or two that popped in my head when I made that joke, and then I laughed. I'm like, oh no, I actually did like them. Because even if I don't like them, I want them to have a place to.
You're putting in 29 hours a day, working your ass off for the last how many years, to even get it up and going.
Yeah.
How do you feel like it's going at this point?
From a growth standpoint, we're very happy. Every month we've had positive growth. Even this month, I think we had a 29% growth rate.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we had one month where we had like almost a 300% growth rate. Like we've had some kick butt months. We will get to where we wanted it. When we originally launched, we expected to go to black ink at 36
Oh yeah, of
months.
course. The first 5 years of any business
Yeah.
is 3 to 5 is difficult.
And it looks like we might hit black ink at the 17th month if growth pace continues, which is way ahead of time for what we
Right.
planned. So we're positive. So I had a larger team when we first started. A couple people passed away on us. A gentleman passed away at 41 years old. The other guy passed away he in his 50s for Pete's sake. And we're not even talking foreseeable stuff. We're talking plane crashes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so here we're not talking things that you anticipated. So it's tougher right now because we don't have the resources we had from the team, and we don't have the extra hands on deck, and that's making it a little more difficult. But we're still pushing forward and getting the job done.
What are the big things people have to look forward to? I know that you've discussed openly about doing a weekly podcast or a monthly podcast about horror movie news or B movie news. I keep going to horror because
Well,
that's
our foundation is horror. There's nothing incorrect about that. But we are not just horror. I mean, there's fantastic B movie comedies out there. There's amazing B movie action films. We care about all the B movies, not just horror, but horror's that foundation. We're not trying to go up against Shudder, and we're not out here fighting Screenbox. We're just a home for any movie that'd be a B film. We even have a couple that lean pretty dramatic. I mean, we have a film that was inspired by Star Wars in there, We have all these type of films that should have been, I feel, this amazing movie that somehow didn't get the life it was supposed to. And that's what's important to me, that sometimes we do bring movies in that might not be what someone would typically think is a true B movie. And they'll look at it and be like, yo, this is actually just an amazing movie, just all around. Like there's this movie called 52577. And when you hear that, you're like, what the hell title is that? And you're right. The title killed it. The title destroyed it. If it wasn't for the title, this movie would be probably a 2010s or 2020s. I think it's 2022. So a 2020s like coming of age film that would be on par with like a Breakfast Club or something along those lines. But people didn't see it and get it because the name is simply the day Star Wars came out. And it's about a guy he's a high school kid, and he wants to make movies one day, and he's with his friends and he's making movies and trying to figure out what his life is supposed to be. And it is a brilliant film that people don't know. And it's on the B stream because people need to know it, and it shouldn't be washed away. And that's the thing that we do care about. It's not just so bad they're good movies. Some of these films are absolutely brilliant that people should know. There's this other one. Oh goodness. Whenever you start to talk about something and you go to bring it up, you start to have that brain fart, where you're like, oh,
oh God, where is it? I mean, but as a fellow nerd, and I apologize to call you that, but
oh no, I am.
I think we take great pride in being that. You want to share the things that you love with other nerds or other people, and when you speak that common language, you just get so pumped up and amped up, and it's somewhere in that nerdology in your head, that labyrinth, if you would, up there. And it's hard to find stuff sometimes. And then 2 minutes later, you'll be like, oh, I know what it was.
Yeah, like right now, it popped in my head. Went to Coney Island on a mission from God. Be back at 5. It's a long title. It's a long title. But it's a great film. It's a brilliant film with amazing performances, with an all-star cast, and people just don't know the darn movie for whatever happened. The marketing just didn't hit. And because of it, people didn't see it, and they missed out on a great film. And likewise, we do have the B movies that are like that, where I thought everyone in the world knew the movie, and I'm like, wait, am I really one of the like only 50 people that watch this movie?
Right.
Like the FP series, a lot of people aren't familiar with it. Maybe even the title hurt that. The FP movies is a gang warfare movie. It's about one gang squaring off against another gang, rival territory, and they're about to duke it out over Dance Dance Revolution.
That is amazing. I do remember hearing about that movie. It's a comedy, right?
Yes,
It's
yes.
kind of
Well,
like
it
a
takes itself seriously, but when you watch it, it takes itself seriously in a very funny way.
yeah,
Like
I
you can't
remember
help but
that.
laugh. But all the
I
characters feel it's real.
I used to be big into ain'titcool.com back in the day
Mhm.
before all the controversy. And I just remember finding all these small little films like throughout time, the B stream could do that same thing. And that's why I think it's so great that you want to do a podcast. I know you teamed with somebody else to do news articles. I can't remember who it was. I know you're reaching out and making connections with all these different places to do stuff. So that's
Yeah,
super
our
exciting.
actual intent is to create kind of like and we've already been shooting. Matter of fact, probably spending more money than we should because we are not wealthy, because I'm going to throw away most of what we have and reformat it. But we're trying to make it kind of like, what was it called? Attack the Show. We want to create kind of like a TV-esque news show that talks about B movies and indie films and fun stuff. That's actually a TV show that's going to be on the B stream. And built off of that will be the segments that are like the podcast versions and what have you. But it's all going to be connected to that circle of life that's going to be based off that news type of show.
Very nice with a nice production value too. That's badass.
The big thing is just simply in this day and age, we really have to say, I care about this thing, I enjoy this thing, I have to be involved in some level. Because as things are progressing, AI is coming into fruition, so many things are going to die. It's just because technology changes, the world changes. And in order to hang on to that, we have to support the things that we're into. Think about all the restaurants that close up in town that we loved, or the arcades that we wish were still here, or the drive-in that's no longer there. These things that we want to have back that we enjoyed, but we just didn't go to or support enough. If you want that, realize right now that you actually have to show up.
Yeah.
You have to be there. You have to tune in. You have to subscribe to the B stream. You have to watch the movie. You have to buy the DVD. You have to say, this is important to me, and speak sometimes out of your pocketbook or out of your time, because if you don't, it won't be there. And we have to take ownership of that. All those things that I loved that aren't here anymore aren't here because I didn't go to them anymore. I'm the villain. I'm the bad guy in the story, not the world. If we would have went, if we would have saw it, if we would have supported it, it would still be here. So we have to do that now for whatever we still love, for the things we want to hold on to, that retro world. That's what the B stream's about. It's about holding on to those things. Pretty soon they're going to be gone. There's not going to be a place for them. Even the traditional ones that we think are keeping a place for them, Tubi's owned by the big guys now. Fox bought Tubi, Disney bought Fox. They're going to unload a lot of that. They're not relicensing a lot of that content. You're not seeing that content on Netflix. Netflix went away from that content a long time ago. They went to big budget stuff and self-produced stuff. You're not going to have those places. So you're going to have to fight for them. And not just for me. If they like your podcast, make sure they tune in to your podcast. Podcasts like these are what helps spread the word about guys like the B Stream or myself, or my movies like Thursday the 12th, Little Creeps, Monsters on Main Street. These come to life and they're shared and people become familiar with it because of these shows. And if we don't tune in, you're not going to keep making episodes. You're not going to find out about this stuff. So people need to tune in. And that's the thing, like, no matter what it is in life, even the people you care about, we have a limited time with them and they won't be here. So you have to commit to the things you care about. You have to make them a priority, or pretty soon you don't have that thing in life, whether it's a loved one or a B movie that you wanted to see.
Bravo. Bravo, good sir. Wow. That is amazing. You almost made me cry there for a second. Jeez. All right, Brad, tell them where they can find you on the internet. Thebstream.com, of course. Subscribe and enjoy. Where else can they find you?
And for the most part, I've been pushing the B stream. I've even got rid of some of my normal fan pages. I've given in. I just had a whole bunch of complaints on a post. So I'm going to bring back bradleolion.com. So it's coming back. You'll be back next month.
Cool.
We did away with it to focus on the B stream and to have me not sending people to Brad and hope they'd go over the B stream. And then all my normal stuff, at Brad Lyon or at the real Brad Lyon on Instagram. We used to have a really big account with hundreds of thousands of people, well, 108,000. But I got kicked off.
Oh no, that's a huge following too.
Yeah,
Damn.
now I've got like 7,000. I don't even
Yeah.
try very hard. I'm working on it again, but it was just disappointing, especially for a silly reason. If it was for politics or something, I understand people getting thrown off crap, but it was because I shared my own trailer.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, they thought it was a copyright violation,
Oh, of course they did.
and then I respond back. I'm like, I am Brad. They're like, can you prove you're Brad? I'm like, I've had a blue check mark for 15 years. What the hell you mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've been here forever. Like before I was Brad, like when I was just a normal Brad, and then they're like, can you send your ID? And I eventually sent my ID. And then weeks later, they're like, this ID has a glare. Can you send it again? And I'm like pissed at this point. I'm like, what the hell do you mean? Like, just get my shit back up. Like, are you guys crazy? Here's my ID again. And then eventually they're like, thank you for proving you're Brad Lyon. However, after 28 days of inactivity, accounts are deleted from our system. And that was my Instagram in my Facebook, which sucked because I have no living relatives anymore. And I wasn't smart enough to save all those photos. So, mom, dad, grandparents, sisters, everyone is, passed away. And I used that for like this digital place where I'd kept a lot of stuff and could share stuff. And then all of it was gone.
That is not cool. That sucks. I'm sorry you went through that. Damn, dude.
Use me as a learning tool.
Yeah, I'm like, I gotta go download these pictures.
Yeah, you got to.
You gotta
get rid of them like that, man.
But you're bringing back the website. You can find the B Stream on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube right now. And you're thinking about opening a TikTok. Definitely do it.
There is a TikTok. We just suck at it. We are terrible at it. I'm sorry to everyone in the TikTok world. I don't know why we are so terrible at it. I put stuff on there. A couple things will get a couple thousand. A couple things will get, what have you. But like I've got less than 100 people, I think, on there. We've got thousands over on, Facebook, but I haven't figured out TikTok.
Brad, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, dude, go check out the B Stream immediately. Go to his website. Everything will be linked in the description. Support the B movie. Support the stuff that you love, like Brad said. Thank you again, Brad.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. With that said, keep horror in your heart, and we will see you on the next one.
And there it is. Thank you again so much for checking out the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and iTunes, and give We Are Podcast Network a like. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, you're going to love the other podcasts here on the We Are Podcast Network. We have We Are Air, where we talk movies, entertainment, whatever the fuck we want to talk about. That's me and that's Jake breaking down that pop culture, and we're having so much fun. And don't forget to check out We Are Bagoo, a video game podcast where we talk Atari to Steam and everything between. Heroes, Zeros, Dungeons, and Distractions side quests. Me and the boys were playing some D&D. You can start that one from Season 1, Episode 1. It's a blast the whole way through. And I Hate Being Sober. Personal stories from epic people. I sit down with some of my favorite people of all time. We talk about their trials, their tribulations, and their journey this far. And finally, our live video podcast, Camp/Horrorcast, where we're going to have a roundtable discussion about our favorite horror movies. That'll be available on Twitch and YouTube, streaming every Monday at 8 p.m. Check the links in the description to find out what movies we'll be watching. Also, check the links in the description for our social media. You can find us at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /We Are Podcast Network. With that said, thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. We'll see you next time.